with that, I'm going to let Rachel tell the very first story. Rachel, come on up. Hello, everyone. All right, so I would like to start this presentation with a statement regarding dignity and hope. For those that are facing homelessness, they may not feel very hopeful. They may be facing a chronic health condition, a mental health condition, worried about where their next food source is going to come from, or other social factors that we may not know about. That said, coming into this building tonight, we may have crossed paths with somebody that was considered to be homeless. We may have made assumptions. That's okay. We all do that. But what's even more important is the fact that if we don't know what's going on, they will continually just be considered as homeless. We lose sight of them as people. We need to know exactly who they are. That said, we partnered with Changing Homelessness to attack their wicked problem, asking us, are we ready for zero? That being functional or effective zero. Functional or effective zero basically tries to demonstrate that a community houses more individuals than they identify. So that said, a homeless individual comes into a homeless shelter, they are assessed and evaluated, their information is inputted, and instead of just going back into the streets, they are placed into permanent or temporary housing. This does one of two things. This helps us reach effective zero by moving people from a shelter into permanent supportive housing, but also it gets people off the streets. But you're probably wondering, how are we going to do this? This sounds very complicated. Well, we need to understand who these people are. Who did we see when we walked by tonight? We need to understand the profiles. In doing so, we need data. Well, we have data. And so we have the Sulzbacher Center, City Rescue Mission, and the Salvation Army. We had these three shelters contributed for our data. So a client comes into these three shelters and it is input into the homeless management information systems. The HMIS asks questions ranging from their residence prior to entry, how long they have been homeless for, if they have any type of barriers, developmental, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, anything like that. We had 629 individuals that came from this system that was collected from March through June 2017. In addition, we also had richer data from these 629 individuals that came from the VI-SPDAT. The VI-SPDAT is a vulnerability index that taps into social and health factors. So, with this data, we wanted to create data-driven profiles to understand who are we dealing with, who needs the most help. So, like I said earlier, the people that we may have passed, these are different people with different problems. John and Sarah here, John is facing a chronic health condition that he's had for the last 20 years. It makes it very difficult for him to walk, to access medical services. Sarah, on the other hand, has been facing a mental health condition that leaves her with a drug dependency. These are two very different people, leading us to believe this is not a group level problem. This is an individual level problem. But before we move on with the profiles, we need a frame of reference. What exactly is happening in the United States as a nation? Well, as you can see, New York City and Los Angeles has very high prevalencies of homelessness, when in fact Jacksonville is actually not that bad, especially to Fort Lauderdale. But what's even more important, and maybe even more surprising, is the costs. It costs about $31,000 in tax dollars to take care of homeless individuals. You may be wondering, that sounds like a lot for somebody that doesn't have a home, doesn't have an address. Well, it costs more money to take care of these people when they don't have an address. They're using more ambulatory services, emergency services, medical services. When in actuality, it would only cost $6,000 to $12,000 to give them permanent supportive housing. This is savings of up to $49 million per year, not in the United States, in Jacksonville. Drilling down more specifically into Jacksonville, this is the point in time count of homelessness here within our city. As we can see, these are profiles that have already been created. These are the most common types of homeless individuals. As we can see in color here, this is our main focus. Chronically homeless in the spectrum, these are the most vulnerable populations. These are the people that immediately need to be housed. Without that, the consequences can be devastating. To be considered chronically homeless, you have to have a disabling condition, something that is pervasive and consistent, something that causes serious impairment. And you also have to be chronically homeless for a year or longer. And as we can see, the rates have gone down, but we have not reached effective zero, and we have not eradicated homelessness. We are also very interested in this all other homeless. Who are these people? Why do we still have such a high rate? But it's also very important in understanding these profiles, a day in the life. We need to look at this from a more humanistic perspective. What are they spending their days doing? Where are they going in the day to find resources, to find food? So this is a day in the life for the migratory search for food. So perhaps they start at Hemming Park, go to Trinity Rescue Mission, go to Clara White for breakfast, Sulzbacher Center for lunch, the City Rescue Mission, or the Sulzbacher Center for dinner. This is a total of 3.37 miles for an average healthy person. John and Sarah are both facing chronic health conditions. Can you imagine how hard this would be for them? This is also a total of 1 hour and 9 minutes. So this obviously is showing that this takes a long time for somebody to access these services. But you're probably more interested, what did we do with the data? What profiles did we find? Well, Greg is here to explain.
Thank you, Rachel. So the first analysis that we conducted was on those individuals who had data from both the VI-SPDAT and the HMIS data set. So what we found is that people typically differ across two dimensions, social and health vulnerability. So in the social vulnerability dimension, you have things like whether their current period of homelessness was caused by trauma, abuse, or poor social relationships, things like that. And then in the health vulnerability, you have chronic health conditions, whether they're not taking medications that they're supposed to, things of that nature. So as you can see, we have 3 different clusters. So in the red, we have 56 individuals who are classified as most vulnerable. So those are people who are high on both the social and health vulnerability scales. In the yellow up there, we have 46 individuals who are classified with health concern. So they are high on the health vulnerability index, but low on the social vulnerability index. And then in the green here, we have 41 individuals who are situational. So they're low on both the social and health indexes. So of importance to us, as well as Changing Homelessness and the shelters that administer these assessments, is what are the questions that best place people into these groups? Which ones determine which people go into which classification. So as you can see, the HMIS, of the 5 questions that were deemed most important, the HMIS has only 1 question on it. So the other 4 are from the VI-SPDAT. And as Rachel mentioned, not everyone who goes into these shelters is administered the VI-SPDAT. So this means we could be missing a whole swath of vulnerable people simply because we're not asking the right questions. So to extend this, we tried to take what we learned from the VI-SPDAT clusters and extend it to the people who had purely HMIS data. And so in doing this, we classified an additional 214 individuals. And as you can see, 76 of those were classified into the most vulnerable category. So these were people who would have been missed otherwise. And in talking with Lauren and other members of Changing Homelessness, we found that dignity was something that is not typically considered in homelessness research. So the number of meals provided, number of beds provided are of course important metrics, but we felt like dignity was an intangible thing that was still very important for people's well-being. And so we conducted an analysis and found that 10 questions fell into 4 categories that explain dignity. So the 4 categories are respect, control, safety, and meaningful daily activity. So respect includes social relationships, whether people owe money to others. Control includes whether people can meet their basic daily needs on a regular basis. And safety includes whether people have been threatened, engage in risky behavior, things like that. And then the meaningful daily activity is whether people do things on a day-to-day basis that have intrinsic value to them. And so we also wanted to determine whether this dignity index that we discovered differentiated between the 3 clusters that we had. And so we did find that in fact it did, that those who were most vulnerable also displayed the lowest amount of dignity compared to the situational and health concern. And so the two factors that played the largest part in this were respect and control. So this dignity index is a novel way to conceptualize the issues that are facing homeless individuals. So if we ask the right questions, we can identify those in dire need of assistance.
Thank you very much. So, in conclusion, we come at you with some recommendations. We think that the HMIS is already doing a wonderful job in really tapping into these vulnerable populations, but we strongly believe that there are things that have been missed. The worst case scenario is that John and Sarah come into a homeless shelter, they are given the HMIS, and they are put into the wrong system or the wrong population. We don't want that to happen. We want more of a triage approach to happen. We want them to come in, we want them to be initially questioned, and we want more effective placement to be had. In doing so, we believe that we will understand all of these profiles, reach effective zero, and provide hope, support, and dignity for John and Sarah. Thank you very much.